On Larry King Now, Mission Impossible Fallout star Simon Pegg.
This one is my fourth.
So, is it now old hat?
No, it never gets old hat because each time we sort of ratchet it up a little bit. So it never feels like we're repeating ourselves. And when we left Tom and Henry and Chris in New Zealand to complete that sequence, Rebecca Ferguson and I were genuinely a little teary because it was like, well, see you then. You know, we didn't know if we'd see them again. I met the new director, S.J. Clarkson, who is the first female director of a Star Trek film, which is exciting. And she is just brimming with ideas and enthusiasm.
Plus,
we had a lot of sherry. It was back in the days when we were slightly more hedonistic. And he power-bombed me, the wrestling move, onto his bed and broke his thumb. And it was an incredible injury. His thumb kind of just was drooping down there, but he'd had so much sherry he didn't notice till the next morning.
so all next on Larry King Now. Welcome to Larry King Now, and our special guest is Mission Impossible Fallout star Simon Pegg. The fan-favorite actor rose to prominence as the creator and star of the British sitcom Spaced. He has gone on to massive big-screen success, writing and starring in Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End. Simon's also lent his talent to global blockbusters like the recent Spielberg movie Ready Player One, and of course Star Trek and Star Wars franchises. Mission Impossible Fallout is in theaters today, July 27th. Whew, what a movie.
What a build-up.
What's your take on it?
I was amazed when I saw it, actually. I mean, it was a long shoot. We were saying before we were on the air that it was 144 days over about a year of shooting, slightly protracted by the fact that Tom broke his ankle, but then recovered in record time. But seeing it all as one together, it was a surprise even to me. Knowing what happens in the film, I was still adrenalized by it, you know.
How the hell do they do those things?
They just do it. I mean, I think what happened was we did Ghost Protocol, the fourth one. Tom hung off the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. And when we watched it with an audience, there was a palpable sense of wonder from the crowd because they could see that he was doing that. And I think Tom really keyed into that and realized that it means something to do stuff for real. You know, now in an age when you can do anything at all now, and it's a great tool to have. CGI has opened up so many doors for us creatively, but there is a level of detachment when you watch something that you know is artificial. When you know it's actually happening, suddenly there's a sense of, you know, you get that tension and it's real. And so he just does it all.
Was he in a helicopter?
Yeah, he learned to fly. He trained for a year and a half to fly aerobatic in a helicopter, which that demonstrates a level of commitment which I don't have, you know. It's crazy.
You've been in how many Mission Impossible?
This one is my fourth.
So is it now old hat?
No, it never gets old hat because each time we sort of ratchet it up a little bit. So it never feels like we're repeating ourselves. It feels like we're always trying to, well, they always say top ourselves. In the UK, to top yourself means to commit suicide, which isn't an entirely irrelevant comparison sometimes. But no, it's always exciting. I learn new things. I learned to drive a speedboat for this and go underwater. And
It's the best one I've ever seen.
I feel like that's
the music is phenomenal, and
yeah,
you own every scene you're in.
Oh, bless you, thank you. Lorne Balfe, who did the score, has done an amazing job just playing on that Layla Schifrin sort of classic theme. And
that original theme is
it's timeless.
Haunting.
Yeah.
You said about Tom Cruise, the thing about Cruise is he cares so much about the audience and the audience's response. He's so committed to making films, he will literally put his life on line in order to get it done or to deliver something which no one else does.
Yeah.
Explain him. I mean, I know him a long time, interviewed him many times, been with him. Explain that kind of intensity.
He is just very committed and dedicated to his craft, you know, and he understands the landscape of filmmaking now. He understands what audiences are looking for, and he is literally at pains to deliver that, you know. And so I mean, I'm not saying he's not reckless. He's not a crazy man. It's not like, yeah, I'll do anything. All these stunts are very well designed. He has an amazing team around him. He's careful. He's very safety conscious. He worries about the rest of the cast like a mother hen. Like he comes on set when we're doing our stunts, sort of clucking and worrying about us, which is hilarious considering what he does. But he just is prepared to go that far.
What was the most nervous scene for you?
Underwater stuff was quite. I mean, in the movie, you can't even see that it's me. That is me, and everybody watching in the wetsuit doing that moment because I had to go inside a structure, and that was fairly.
How about riding that boat?
That was fun. They gave me the River Seine for like 2 hours to just bomb up and down. That was like a holiday. It was fun, but I did actually nearly tip Ving Rhames out into the river.
Are these fun movies to make, or are they another day of hard work?
I'd say a little bit of both, you know. I mean, they take a long time, and the days are long. Sometimes you'll go in and you won't shoot all day, and then you'll just go home because they didn't get around to you. And some days you're working all day, and it's very difficult. But it's always fun. Anytime you get, you know, when Tom's on set, there's always a sense of you're making something, you know, large and interesting. And it's never boring when he's around.
How many cities were you in?
Well, technically, we started off in Paris. We shot in London, we shot in Queenstown, New Zealand for Kashmir, because obviously Kashmir is very contested, so we couldn't shoot there for real. And that was it, really. They went to Norway, to Pulpit Rock. The big sequence at the end on the cliff is a landmark in Norway called Pulpit Rock.
They were on that cliff.
They were on that cliff. Of course they were. It's Tom. There's no faking.
How long can this franchise keep going, do you think?
Well, I think the simple answer is as long as he can. And he doesn't really show any signs of slowing down. It's amazing that I think Roger Moore was a year older when he did A View to a Kill and is pretty sedate in that movie compared to Tom, who is doing more physical action than he did in any of the previous films at 55. So, who knows? I'm intrigued to know, Larry. I don't know.
I want to tell you something. You were terrific.
Oh, thank you.
I sent out a tweet. If you don't like Mission Impossible Fallout, take your pulse, because you've passed away. Next, we'll discuss some of Simon's other standout roles, like Star Trek. Plus, what can we expect from his newest project alongside Nick Frost, titled Truth Seekers? Don't click away.
He's late. He's never late.
He'll be here.
I don't like it. Something about this guy, it just really gives me the creeps.
That was a clip from Mission Impossible Fallout, which opens today, Friday, July 27th. When you look back at the start of your career, did you see yourself doing big-budget action films?
No, not at all.
How did it come about for you?
Well, I mean, we did Spaced, which was a sitcom for Channel 4 in the UK. Edgar Wright and myself were on set one day and we decided it would be fun to make a zombie movie, and I think powered by naivety and just sheer enthusiasm, we managed to get that done in Shaun of the Dead. And J.J. Abrams saw Shaun of the Dead and literally called me at work one day. And Edgar and I were writing Hot Fuzz, the sequel to Shaun, and just said, hey, it's J.J. Abrams, would you like to be in Mission Impossible 3? As he tends to do, he's very forthright. And I said yes. And then did a couple of days on that movie. I think became friends with JJ quite quickly. He asked me to do Star Trek, and then Ghost Protocol happened. I mean, I have a lot to thank JJ for. You know, he's been the architect of much of my sort of career. And
You don't think they're going to kill you off, do you?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
You never know when you get the
You're too valuable, because you're the only comedy relief.
Well, I think the thing about Benji is that he's like a member of the audience. You know, he's the guy that says the kind of things we would say in that situation. He questions it. He draws attention to the absurdity. And in a world of like super secret agents, that's kind of funny to actually have a human voice in it all. It's not like he's always cracking gags.
And it should be added, there's a lot of laughs in this.
Yeah, I think Tom is very funny in this.
Yeah, he is.
Because Ethan's kind of a bit at sea, you know, he's questioning himself. And Tom plays vulnerable very well. And like, if you see movies like Jerry Maguire or even an action movie like Edge of Tomorrow, he plays people who are with faults. He plays brilliantly, I think.
You're a sci-fi geek.
I guess, yeah.
Are you noticed everywhere now, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, it gets more and more as you are in more stuff, I suppose.
You started in comedy, right?
I did, yeah.
Is that your preference?
Not really. I started as a stand-up because I'd graduated from university having done a drama degree and kind of felt like that was a way to have some autonomy rather than just become an actor and wait for the phone to ring. And then I got back into acting through comedy, and the first acting I did was comedy. So I've sort of specialised in comedy, but it's not the be-all and end-all for me.
You started your own production company called Stolen Pictures.
Yeah.
Stolen Picture with Nick Frost. Tell us about Truth Seekers.
Truth Seekers is a show that we're writing. I don't think we're going to be in it like a double header. I'm going to be in it. I think Nick's going to take one of the main roles. It's a comedy about sort of paranormal investigators, and we decided to start a production company because we wanted to have some ownership over what we do. Most of what we've done is owned by other forces, so we thought we'd start our own little shingle. And TV seems to be an incredibly creative and exciting place at the moment,
Like Netflix and...
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be where a lot of the kind of mid-budget stuff that used to be occupied by films that were made for $35, $40 million, now all that stuff seems to be made on television. There's low-budget indie movies, and there are these huge movies. And everything in the middle now seems to be migrating.
Do you have a particular interest in the paranormal?
Only in a sort of, not in any way that would suggest I believe in it. I'm a bit of a rationalist in that respect, but it's certainly comedy gold.
I understand you're in the next Star Trek, true?
Yeah, well, as long as they want the what they call the Kelvin cast. It's the rebooted sort of version of the Shatner era, and I'm Scotty, as far as I know. So. Yeah, I met the new director, S.J. Clarkson, who is the first female director of a Star Trek film, which is exciting. And she is just brimming with ideas and enthusiasm. I can't wait to work with her.
And you play Scotty?
Aye.
When do you start shooting?
Don't know. I mean, as far as I know, we're sort of in soft prep at the moment. I would imagine next year at some point, hopefully early next year.
Do you like getting involved, going to do things with other former co-stars and the rest?
It's great. I mean, like this and Mission Impossible, it's like getting the band back together. You don't see each other for a couple of years. We stay in touch, but everyone's also busy, and then you come back and it's like, we were never apart.
And what's it like when you see the final product?
Thrilling, always, It was particularly Star Trek Beyond, which I co-wrote with Doug Jung, and that was a real, felt like a Mission Impossible, ironically. And to see that finished was an absolute joy,
And you also told me that a lot of scenes in Mission Impossible were cut.
Yeah. I mean, the way that we created it, the way that Chris McQuarrie wrote it, he thrives in a situation where he's being forced to think on his feet. So we sort of wrote it. We started with 33 pages, and he kind of wrote as we went. And I always say he was like, in Wallace and Gromit, The Wrong Trousers, Gromit is riding a train and laying the track in front of the train as it's moving. That's how Chris writes.
So you did action scenes?
So there were big scenes that, I think after the first test screening, the note was, there's too much action, which just seems ridiculous. But that was the case.
So you cut a lot of scenes out?
There are some big moments that were on the cutting room floor.
And it's still 2.5 hours.
Yeah. It could have been a beast. But no one's heart can race for that long, so they cut it down.
Yeah, you're right. When we return, secret talents, guilty pleasures, and biggest risks in a game of If You Only Knew with Mission Impossible Fallout star Simon Pegg. Stay with us. We're back with Simon Pegg. Mission Impossible Fallout is terrific. It opens today, Friday, July 27th. Okay, we play a little game of If You Only Knew. Who was your childhood celebrity crush?
Carrie Fisher.
Biggest risk you ever took?
Biggest risk I ever took? Oh, my goodness. Studying drama, I guess,
When was the first time you realized you were famous?
Somebody came up to me in the street and said hello, and it was overwhelming and surprising.
Person from history you'd like to portray on screen?
That is a great question. Oh man, I would need to cogitate over a long period in a history book to come up with an answer for that. Maybe someone from music history, maybe a Beatle or something. John Lennon, maybe, that'll be fun.
Bad. First non-Hollywood job?
Oh, I was a lifeguard at a public swimming baths in Gloucester in England.
Were you good?
I never had to go in. I think that's the equivalent of never having to draw your weapon. I never had to actually go into the pool, but I policed it with maximum intensity.
What's your least favorite part about Hollywood?
The kind of superficiality of it sometimes. You know, you sometimes feel like you're being talked up by people who just want something from you. I've had a good experience, I think, overall, and the people I've met have been surprisingly nice. You expect worse, I think.
What animal do you wish you could talk to?
My dogs. Oh, I wish I could talk to my dogs.
Do you wonder what they're thinking?
All the time. I think I know what they're thinking. They've got very expressive faces, but yeah, you got to wonder what they're thinking. They have it easy.
You're absolutely true. What's the best piece of advice you ever got?
Identify the thing that you love to do, and then try and do that for a living. That's what I always tell my daughter. You know, find whatever it is. Try and do the thing you love doing, your hobby. Try and do that as your job.
That's what I've done for 61 years.
There you go.
It has not worked. It's not worked.
I thought you said it's not worked. I'm like, what do you mean, Larry? Larry King.
This has not worked. Come on.
I know, exactly. I feel the same way.
What's the worst piece of advice you ever got?
There are so many answers to that question. Probably wear those shoes. Not these. These are nice ones.
Action scene from Mission Impossible Fallout that gave you the most anxiety?
Larry, I can honestly say most days there was anxiety. The helicopter sequence, because you can't stall a helicopter. If a helicopter stalls, it drops, you know. And the things that Tom was going to be doing were clearly very, very dangerous. And when we left Tom and Henry and Chris in New Zealand to complete that sequence, Rebecca Ferguson and I were genuinely a little teary, because it was like, well, see you then. You know, we didn't know if we'd see them again. So that was a stressful day.
The amazing scene.
It's incredible. It's a wonder they did it, though.
How long does that take?
I think it took about 2 or 3 weeks to pick up that whole sequence.
Unbelievable.
It really is.
There are people up there flying, looking for...
Oh, yeah. And then there's the pursuit copter, there's the 2 copters that are in the shot. I mean, there were like 10 or 12 helicopters in play at any one time. It was... McHugh sent me a clip from the video monitor of Tom just hanging on to the cargo bag, just like, same old, same old.
You won't believe it, but that's one of the great scenes I've ever seen in a movie. Things we Americans get wrong about British culture.
Our teeth aren't as bad as they used to be. I think we've taken a leaf out of the American dentistry book. I don't know, that we're all sort of faintly posh and intelligent.
Everyone thinks if you're Britain, you're intelligent.
It's crazy, I know. Oh, well.
Thing the Brits get wrong about America.
That you don't get irony. That seems to be a constant thing, is like, oh, they don't get irony. The American sense of irony is incredibly sophisticated. The reason that misconception comes about is because you don't use it socially as much as we do, because you're not as ashamed of your emotions as we are. So Americans are slightly more open. They're more inclined to clap and cheer and smile and emote, whereas we're so ashamed of ourselves that we constantly undercut our feelings with sarcasm. And that's why that myth arises.
Place we'd find you on a day off?
Home.
What's the biggest misconception about Simon Pegg?
That I live, eat, and sleep and breathe science fiction and stuff like that.
Best memory from the set of Mission Impossible?
Oh, possibly, if I had to pick, maybe the Paris days when we were driving the speedboat through the canals and the lights were shining down, and it was so cinematic just being there.
Did they clear the whole river?
Yeah, they gave us the river. Paris were incredible. They gave us the sky and the streets and the river, and they'd never done that for any film, and they probably won't do it again. They were just very keen for people to see Paris as being the beautiful place that it is. It wasn't long after the Bataclan attacks, and I think they felt like they wanted to give Paris back in a very visual sense.
If not acting, then what?
I think I might be doing like special effects makeup. I'm quite friendly with Greg Nicotero, who is the EP on The Walking Dead, and he does all the zombies, and I've always loved all that stuff.
Simon Pegg in 10 years.
I hope so.
That's right, just be here. Mission Impossible Fallout star Simon Pegg will take your questions from social media when we return. You don't want to miss this. Stay with us.
back with Simon Pegg, one of the stars of Mission Impossible Fallout. I saw it at a screening the other night. It is sensational and funny, and action scenes, and some they cut out. I'd like to see the ones they cut out. Someday we'll see them.
Yeah, I would hope
Cut out
so.
scenes from it opens today, and you will thoroughly enjoy it. We were flooded with social media questions. We have a few.
Okay.
At C. Mullen on Twitter, how have you your approaches to killing zombies evolved?
Well, on a day-to-day basis, they remain fairly
He's
similar.
referring to Shaun of the Dead.
I figured. I always think, a blunt object. You don't have to reload a cricket bat or a club. The heavy reliance on ordnance can be your downfall.
Why are we fascinated by zombies?
Because they're us. They're the manifestation of our own destiny. They are death walking, and that's our greatest fear. And so the zombie is the absolute distillation of our primary fear. It's us dead.
Julian Bozel on the Larry King Now blog. What makes your bond with Nick Frost so special?
I think because it existed before we worked together. We were friends before we were colleagues, and I sort of dragged him into acting because he didn't have anything else to do at the time, and we've been able to maintain a friendship through work as well. But he was my friend before he was my sort of work partner, and remains so. And I think that probably shines through in our collaboration.
I interviewed him in Britain.
You did?
A couple of years ago. He's a terrific guy.
He's a great guy.
Jackson Badger on the Larry King Now blog. You and Deep Roy are the only two actors to appear in Star Trek, Star Wars, and Doctor Who. Any other major franchises you want to work in?
No, not specifically. I mean, I always try and take each job as it comes, and if something comes up which is in a franchise, then I'll regard it as any other job. But it's not like I'm trying to tick them off. It looks like I am, but I'm not.
Andrew Thomas on the Larry King Now blog. If you could make a sequel to either Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, or The World's End, which one would it be, and what would it be about?
I think the only one of those films that could possibly get a sequel is Hot Fuzz, just because that could be a continuing sort of action-style cop thing. I don't know. It feels like it would have to be, because Hot Fuzz was about my character going to the countryside to be a cop in a small town. It would have to be about Nicholas Angel taking Nick Frost's character Danny to the big city. It would have to be like Crocodile Dundee 2 was, that sort of reversal of plot.
Corrine Orley on the Larry King Now blog. Do you think you've been affected by fame? Is there any downside to it?
You can't help but be affected by it in some way, as long as it doesn't change who you are. I read a great quote once that said, "Fame doesn't make you a bad person; it just brings out the bad person you always were." So I think as long as you stay connected to who you really are, you can weather it.
Well said. Corrine also asks, do you and Nick Frost ever fight? And if so, what do you fight about?
We had a fight once back in the day. It was actually a physical fight, like a real fight, but it was a play fight. We had a lot of sherry. It was back in the days when we were slightly more hedonistic. And he power-bombed me, a wrestling move, onto his bed and broke his thumb. And it was an incredible injury. His thumb kind of just was drooping down there. But he'd had so much sherry he didn't notice till the next morning.
Is there a key to longevity in the business?
I think just stay frosty, and keep evolving, mutate and survive, and also self-generate. It's important. I've always found it's important to generate my own material as well as wait for other people to ask me to do things.
I will tell you, I love your work. I love this movie.
Thank you.
And I've so enjoyed meeting you.
Me too, likewise.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, sir.
Big thanks to my guest, Simon Pegg. Be sure to see Mission Impossible Fallout in theaters today, July 27th. You will love it. As always, you can find me on Twitter at King's Things. I'll see you next time.